A light rain fell over the small village. The corrugated iron roof tinkled rhythmically with the falling raindrops. Inside the old wooden house, a little girl named Taidy sat swinging her legs on the floor, watching her father mend the decaying floorboards. She wondered why their house was so small and simple, while the houses in the city seemed bigger and more beautiful. But her father only smiled and spoke of something Taidy didn't understand, the word basic. "Dad, why don't you build a big house like the ones in the city?" Her father chuckled softly. "A big house? But if the foundation isn't strong, it can collapse too, my dear." Basic? Is it more important than the house itself? Very important, my dear. If the foundation is good, the house will last. Taidy frowned slightly. She had heard the word basic in textbooks, but she never thought it concerned houses or real life. The little girl bent down and lightly touched the wooden floor, as if trying to hear the answer from beneath her feet. She didn't know that the simple words her father spoke on this rainy evening were about to become a riddle that the entire village would soon have to learn. One morning, the quiet village suddenly bustled as several trucks pulled up, filled with workers and tools. The new homeowner was a wealthy newcomer named Uncle Prateep. He commissioned the construction of a 3-story house. Mirrored windows, automatic doors, and a resort-like curved roof. Soon, a massive 3-story house began to take shape in the middle of the small village. It was taller, more imposing, and more luxurious than any house the villagers had ever seen. The villagers stared in amazement. "Wow, what a tall house!" Taidy, "Mom, look, it's taller than the mango tree." Taidy gazed at the huge house with sparkling eyes. For a small child, the house looked like a giant toy or a huge cake at a celebration. Taidy whispered, "It looks like a wedding cake." Her mother chuckled softly and said a phrase Taidy had heard before. "But a cake needs a base, dear." The word base. Taidy didn't yet understand its significance, but that word began to linger in her mind again. A few months after Uncle Prateep's large house began construction, the small village started to transform. Many old wooden houses were renovated. Some added a second floor, others added taller fences. It was as if some kind of competition was brewing, though no one said it outright. But everyone knew it was happening. One villager said, "Their house has 3 floors. We have to make ours look nice too." Another replied, "Yes, otherwise people will think we're backward." Taidy sat on a small wooden chair in front of the house, watching the adults have a serious conversation. One uncle spoke in a low voice, "If our house looks small, others will look down on you." Another nodded, "These days, you have to look good." Their words sounded like they were competing with someone. Taidy tilted her head. Is looking good more important than being safe? The little girl tilted her head, asking a simple question like a child would. Some of the adults chuckled softly, but no one really answered the question. That night, Taidy lay on her mat and heard her parents talking softly. "Mother," softly, "many families borrowed money to build their houses." Father sighed deeply. "Some haven't even finished paying off their old mortgages yet." The word debt floated silently through the small room. The little girl didn't understand what debt was, but she felt one thing. The houses in the village were getting taller and taller, but the people inside seemed to get more tired every day. One afternoon, Taidy secretly went to watch the workers digging under Uncle Prateep's big house. The sound of shovels hitting the ground was rhythmic. Thud, thud. In the deep hole, Water was slowly seeping up, making the soil soft and wet. The girl crouched down, watching curiously. To her, the soil seemed like ordinary soil, but for the workers, it was telling a very important story. One worker muttered softly, "This kind of soil is no good." Another replied, "If the piles aren't driven deep enough, the house will sink." "Taidy, can the soil talk?" The workers laughed at the girl's question, but pointed down into the hole. The seemingly ordinary wet soil was sending a signal. The worker laughed. "Speak." The worker pointed down into the hole. "It's saying it can't bear the weight. It might not be strong enough for the house that's about to be built." "Taidy, can soil get tired too?" Taidy looked down silently. In her mind, the word fundamentals began to return. In the evening, Taidy returned home and told her father about the soil. "Taidy, Dad, can soil really tell us something?" Her father picked up a lump of soil and gently squeezed it in his hand. The soil easily broke apart into powder. He looked at it silently before speaking slowly. "Father, maybe what destroys our house isn't the wind, it's not the rain." He put the soil down. "But it's something we never bother to look at. Sometimes what destroys a house isn't the storm we see, but the small things beneath our feet that we never pay attention to." The next morning, Taidy walked to the construction site again. Uncle Prateep was standing there, looking at the house plans with the engineer. There were numbers everywhere, like a puzzle too difficult to understand. A little girl gently tugged at Uncle Prateep's sleeve and spoke her mind. "Uncle." Uncle Prateep. "Yes, little one?" "Taidy, the ground isn't strong, is it?" The child's words sounded simple, but for many adults it was like a small voice no one wanted to hear. The little girl's question made some of them chuckle softly. One of the engineers laughed. "Don't worry, child." Uncle Prateep smiled. "We have skilled people taking care of it." For them, it was just a simple question from a child, but Taidy still stood there. She looked at the ground, then at the house that was getting taller and taller, as if trying to understand something the adults hadn't noticed. Taidy didn't leave. She asked again, "Taidy, if the foundation isn't strong, will the house last long?" Uncle Prateep paused to think. Then, as if he'd heard the question before, he answered, "Uncle Prateep, it lasts long enough for others to see its beauty." Taidy softly, "So the house isn't built for the people inside?" Uncle Prateep's answer immediately silenced the atmosphere. Some workers stopped working. Some looked at the ground as if deep in thought. Taidy didn't understand everything the adults said, but she sensed that there was something hidden in the sentence. It sounded like a sad truth, like some houses weren't built to be lived in, but built for others to look at. That night, it started raining early in the evening and showed no sign of stopping. The wind blew so hard that the trees throughout the village swayed violently. The sound of rain pounding on the roofs was incessant, as if nature was knocking on the doors of every house in the village. Taidy stood looking out the window. A strange feeling made her quieter than usual. "Taidy, Dad, it's raining so hard." "Father, the wind is very strong tonight. Stay close to me, my child." Around 2 o'clock in the morning, strange noises came from Uncle Prateep's large house. Creak. The ground began to slowly sink. The walls began to tilt. The wood cracked as if something was breaking. Several doors opened simultaneously. Villagers ran out into the rain to see what was happening. Villagers shouted, "The house is tilting." Another cried, "It's collapsing." A loud crash echoed through the village. The 3-story house, once the tallest, collapsed halfway in seconds. Dust rose, mixing with the rain. Everyone stood silently. Taidy held her father's hand tightly. She gazed at the ruins of the house, as if trying to understand something. Sometimes houses don't collapse because of storms, but they collapse because what was underneath was never strong enough. Taidy softly said, "Dad, does the house hurt?" Dad was silent for a long time. Before answering, Dad said, "It doesn't hurt, my child." Dad looked at the ruins of the house, but the person who built it might hurt. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the village was still silent. Many villagers gathered around the ruins of what was once the tallest house in the village. Pieces of wood and collapsed walls lay piled on the ground. Whispers mingled, some discussing the lost money, others shaking their heads in regret. One villager, "Millions were lost." Another whispered, "What a pity." But for Taidy, what interested her was the man sitting near the ruins. Uncle Prateep sat on an old wooden chair near the remains of his house. His eyes looked weary than usual. When Taidy asked a simple question, he answered with a truth that few people spoke so frankly. "Taidy, are you sad, Uncle?" He looked at her, his eyes weary. "Uncle Prateep, of course I am." He chuckled softly. "But you know, that house wasn't built to be lived in." Taidy was puzzled. Then why was it built? Uncle Prateep replied, "So that others would think I was successful." Sometimes houses aren't built to be inhabited. They are built to make others believe that their owners are successful. Uncle Prateep looked at the ruins of the house one last time and said softly, "It seems the earth doesn't care about such a success at all." After the house collapsed, everything in the village fell silent again. This time there were no announcements, no parties, no one to admire the luxury. There was only the sound of machinery driving piles into the ground. Thump, thump, thump. Taidy stood watching and began counting intently to the rhythm. Taidy, 1, 2, 3. Engineer, we have to drive the piles very deep. Taidy, why? Engineer, so that the house can stand even when the ground is weak. The engineer calmly explained to the girl, the piles had to be deep enough for the house to stand even when the ground was unstable. Taidy was silent for a moment, as if deep in thought. Before speaking softly, Taidy, just like people. Engineer, exactly. It's just like people. If the foundation inside is strong enough, even if the world shakes one day, we can still stand. Months passed and the village returned to peace. Uncle Prateep's new house was finished, but it wasn't as tall and grand as his old one. It was just a simple, ordinary, and unremarkable house. Many villagers stood watching, whispering softly to each other with curiosity. The villagers whispered, "Do rich people build houses like this?" Another whispered, "It's so much smaller than the old one." Uncle Prateep spoke in a calm voice. Houses aren't meant to be a competition. He looked at the children playing. They're there for the people inside to stand on, even when the outside world collapses. He no longer cared how big the house looked. What mattered to him now was its strength. This small house might not impress anyone, but he knew it was built to protect those inside. Taidy looked down at the ground beneath her feet. She was beginning to understand something her father had said that rainy day. Taidy murmuring softly, "Foundations are more important than the house itself." Many adults are trying to build houses higher and higher, but only a few are truly building deep foundations. One evening, Taidy sat on a small hill, gazing down at her village. Many houses seemed taller than before, but some were beginning to show small cracks from hastily constructed additions. A cool breeze swept through the village silently. Her father looked at his daughter and asked a short question, one that seemed to have long awaited an answer to. He asked, "Do you understand now?" Taidy nodded. "I'm beginning to understand." Then she spoke as if telling a fairy tale. Taidy, people like to build houses stronger than their foundations. She paused for a moment. Houses, knowledge, fame, or life. Taidy spoke as if telling a story to adults. Her words were simple, yet they silenced many. The little girl was beginning to understand something that many adults had never stopped to think about. Sometimes people try to create something grand for the world to see, but forget to build a strong foundation for themselves. A cool breeze swept through the village silently. Many adults stood still, as if contemplating the little girl's words. Taidy, don't build your house stronger than its foundations. Taidy looked at the ground beneath her feet. Make your foundations stronger than your house. Before looking up into the distance, one unanswered question lingered in her mind. If the whole world is building houses higher and higher, how many people are building their own foundations deep and strong? The story ends here, but the girl's question remains.